The crisp smell of fresh paint hit me first, then my mother's voice echoing through the hallway of my house that I'd bought 3 months ago and told no one about. I'd just returned from a lunch meeting when I noticed an unfamiliar car in my driveway and my front door slightly ajar. "And here's where we'll knock down this wall to expand the living room," she said confidently, as if she owned the place. "The natural light will be perfect once we add those floor-to-ceiling windows." My fingers dug into the doorframe as I watched her lead my sister-in-law Rachel and a man in an expensive suit through my living room. The stranger nodded appreciatively, jotting notes in a leather portfolio while Rachel ran her hand over my custom bookshelf, the one I'd spent weekends installing myself. "Finally," Rachel said with that familiar condescending smile. "A property in our family worth showing off. How long have you been keeping this secret, Nora?" My mother didn't correct her, didn't mention it wasn't hers to show. Instead, she straightened her shoulders and lowered her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "I've been planning to expand our family's real estate portfolio for years. This place is just the beginning." "My name is Vanessa, I'm 32, and I built a tech company from my bedroom floor. This is the story of how I reclaimed not just my house, but my entire identity." The taste of copper filled my mouth as I bit my cheek to keep from screaming. Every dollar in this house came from my work. The late nights coding until my vision blurred, the investors who laughed me out of rooms, the 3 years of ramen dinners and secondhand clothes, while my savings grew dollar by painful dollar. The suited man flipped a page in his notebook. "And you're the sole owner on the deed? No co-signers or family claims?" His pen hovered expectantly. My mother's lips curled into that smile I'd known my whole life, the one that preceded every lie she'd ever told about me. "Of course," she said, and I could hear it in her voice. She was about to erase me completely, again. "Actually," I said, stepping into view, "the sole owner is standing right here." 3 heads whipped around in perfect unison. Rachel's jaw slackened. The man's eyebrows shot up. But my mother, her face transformed from confident to panicked in a heartbeat, the flush draining from her cheeks so quickly I could almost hear it go. "Vanessa," she stammered, recovering quickly. "What are you doing here? I thought you were at my minimum wage job? Still struggling to make rent in my shared apartment?" The words came out calmer than I felt. "Funny how those stories you tell about me never seem to match reality." Rachel's eyes darted between us, confusion replacing her usual smugness. "Wait, what's happening? Nora, you said you bought this place." "She hasn't bought anything," I said, pulling my house keys from my pocket. The metal caught the afternoon light streaming through my windows I'd chosen, measured for, and paid for. "These aren't copies. They're originals." The man took a half step back, his professional demeanor cracking. "Perhaps I should—" "No, stay," my mother cut in, grabbing his sleeve. Her voice had that razor edge I remembered from childhood, the one that appeared whenever her control slipped. "Vanessa is just confused. She's always been emotional about family matters." A bitter laugh escaped me as I crossed to the kitchen counter and pulled a thick manila envelope from my messenger bag. Confused or prepared? The sound of paper sliding across granite punctuated my question as I laid out the deed, the closing documents, the mortgage approval with only my name in bold black letters. The man picked them up carefully, his expression shifting from interest to discomfort as he verified what I already knew. "These appear to be in order." He glanced at the papers. "Ms. Lane is indeed the legal owner." Rachel's arms crossed defensively over her designer blouse. "If this is true, then what exactly have you been doing, Nora?" The perfect family facade was cracking in real time, and for once I wasn't the one being blamed for the fracture. My mother's mask slipped further, her voice turning venomous. "Why didn't you tell anyone about this house, Vanessa? Were you planning to keep it hidden forever like some shameful secret?" I almost laughed at the irony. "A secret?" "Mom, I worked 80-hour weeks for 3 years to afford this place. I kept it private because every time I've shared my success, this family finds a way to claim it as their own." I looked directly at Rachel. "Or tear it down completely." The man cleared his throat. "I think perhaps I should step outside." My mother's manicured fingers dug into his arm. "No, you need to hear me out. This house is meant for the family portfolio. She's being dramatic, as usual." Rachel couldn't resist piling on. "Honestly, Vanessa, it doesn't matter whose name is on some paper. You can barely keep your phone bill paid. This house would be safer in your mother's hands." White-hot rage flickered behind my eyes. They had no idea about the venture capital meetings, the patent applications, the team of 28 employees now working for me. In their minds, I was frozen as the struggling college dropout they could feel superior to. But the suited man, apparently the only one with professional ethics in the room, looked directly at me. "With all due respect, the documentation leaves no doubt. Legally, she's the sole owner." He slid the papers back toward me, and I noticed my mother's hand twitch, as though she wanted to snatch them away. I leaned in close to her, close enough to smell the familiar Chanel perfume she'd worn since I was a child. "You didn't just try to take credit, Mom. You tried to erase me. Again." My voice remained steady despite the earthquake happening in my chest. "So tell me the truth. How many more of my achievements have you stolen when I wasn't looking?" The room fell silent. My mother's mouth opened, but no sound emerged. Rachel glanced nervously between us, and in that silence, I felt the weight of bigger secrets pressing down. My mother finally broke first. "You wouldn't understand, Vanessa. I had to protect this family. Everything I've done was for us." I tilted my head, feeling a strange calm settle over me. "Protect us by selling my house behind my back? By lying to strangers and pretending my work is yours?" Her eyes darted to the man, then back to me. Desperation crept into her voice. "You think you're the only one who sacrificed?" "I used your credit years ago, Vanessa. That's how your brother got his business loan. That's how your father kept his practice afloat when the malpractice suit hit. You think you built your life alone? My choices held this family together." My breath caught in my throat. The random credit inquiries, the loan applications mysteriously denied, the years I couldn't qualify for an apartment without a co-signer. It wasn't bad luck or my own failure. It was systematic theft of my financial identity. Rachel's gasp echoed my shock. "You used her name? Without telling her? That's identity theft, Nora." My mother hissed at her to be quiet, but the damage was done. I stepped forward, hands trembling but voice controlled. So every time I felt like a failure, every time I couldn't understand why my credit was destroyed, it wasn't me failing. It was you, draining me dry while telling everyone I was worthless. The man backed toward the door, clearly uncomfortable. "This is a serious legal matter. I cannot be involved in this discussion." He handed me his business card. "Please contact my office when you've resolved your family situation." The door clicked shut behind him, and with it, my mother's grand plan collapsed like a house of cards. Rachel wouldn't even look at her, shaking her head in disbelief. I could feel my heartbeat in my fingertips, taste metal on my tongue. But instead of breaking down, I stood taller. "You tried to erase me, Mom. But guess what? I've been building something far bigger than you can imagine." I kept my voice level, professional, the same tone I used in boardrooms when closing million-dollar deals. "And when I reveal it, you'll wish you'd never crossed me." Her face drained of color. She knew I wasn't bluffing. For the first time in my life, I watched fear replace her arrogance. This wasn't just about a house anymore. It was about every lie, every theft, every betrayal stacked against me over decades. My mother tried to regain control, her voice breaking into familiar patterns. "Vanessa, you're overreacting. We're family. We share everything." I cut her off with a laugh so sharp it made her flinch. "No, Mom. You take everything. There's a difference." I reached into my bag and pulled out a sleek black portfolio embossed with a silver logo, my company's logo. Inside were contracts, bank statements, and press releases with headlines like "Tech Start Names Vanessa Lane among 30 under 30." I laid the documents on the dining table, my dining table, with a satisfying thud. Rachel leaned forward, eyes widening as she scanned the top page. "Wait, this says you're the CEO, and these numbers—" Her voice trailed off as she calculated the figures, 7 digits where she'd expected none. I stepped closer, my voice calm but carrying the weight of years of pent-up truth. "Yes, While you all laughed at me, while you called me a failure, I built a tech company that now clears more money in a month than either of you have seen in your lives. I gestured around the house. And this? It's one of 3 properties I own. Rachel's jaw physically dropped. The color drained completely from my mother's face as she sank into my sofa, her perfectly manicured hand clutching at her throat as if the ground beneath her had vanished. You used my credit. You stole my future. You tried to erase me, I continued, each word deliberate and precise. But you can't erase someone who's already written her own success story. Tears welled in my mother's eyes, not from remorse, I knew, but from the realization that she'd lost control of the narrative she'd crafted about me for years. You wanted to sell my house? I asked, my voice dropping to a near whisper that forced them both to lean in. Go ahead and tell the neighbors. Tell them your daughter is the founder and CEO of NeuroSync. Tell them you tried to steal from me and failed spectacularly. The room went perfectly still. They both stared at me, but I felt nothing but a profound sense of freedom. The underdog they'd mocked for years was gone. I wasn't their burden anymore. I was their reckoning, living proof they couldn't control me or my story any longer. I picked up my keys and walked to the front door, pausing with my hand on the handle. I'll expect your keys on this counter by morning. Both sets. I didn't turn to look at them. And Mom? Those credit accounts you opened? My lawyers will contact you about those by the end of the week. As I walked out, leaving my mother and Rachel in stunned silence, I felt the sweetest revenge possible. Not in destroying them, but in showing them that despite their best efforts, I had succeeded without them. Sometimes the best revenge isn't making someone pay. It's showing them they never had the power to stop you in the first place. 3 months later, my brother called. He claimed he'd had no idea about the credit fraud, and I believed him. My mother had always been careful to keep her children isolated from each other. The criminal charges against my mother were filed, and while we no longer speak, my relationship with my brother has begun to heal. As for my father, he chose to stand by her despite everything, finalizing my decision to build my own family from people who actually value me for who I am.